Rockbeard presents the 5 most horrifying real-life serial killing couples. Number 5. Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris. Lawrence Bittaker, born in Pennsylvania, and Roy Norris of Colorado were both convicted criminals who got to know each other while serving time at California Men's Colony in 1977. Bittaker found himself incarcerated at this time for assault with intent to murder, Norris for rape, crimes which foreshadowed the killing duo's later modus operandi. It seems Bittaker recognized a depraved kindred spirit in Norris. When the two men were released, Lawrence Bittaker contacted Roy Norris and the two met. They formulated a plan to systematically kidnap and rape young women. They hoped to target one girl for each teenage year in a van they purchased together. Between June and October 1979, the ruthless pair killed 5 young women and girls ranging from age 13 to 18. They were arrested after Bittaker confidently bragged to an ex-cellmate who reported the killings to his lawyer. Number 4. Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka. Two of the most horrific killers in Canadian history, Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka were a dashing young married couple responsible for the brutal assaults and murders of countless young women. The two met in 1987 when Karla was just 17 and Paul was 6 years her senior. That same year, the Scarborough rapist was out in force, terrorizing young women all over Scarborough, Ontario. It's not clear whether or not Karla knew when she met him that her future husband was that same monster. What is certain, however, is that she eventually learned of her husband's proclivities and went on to help and encourage their fulfillment. Karla is believed to have aided Paul Bernardo in luring young girls to the home they shared, videotaping their sexual assault and murder. At least 3 murders have officially been linked to Paul Bernardo, along with countless rape victims. The killer couple was responsible for drugging, sexually assaulting, and indirectly murdering Karla's younger sister Tammy Homolka in 1990 at the family home. Karla Homolka eventually turned her husband in return for a plea bargain. She led police to videotape evidence and testified against Bernardo in return for a much-reduced sentence of 12 years. Bernardo remains behind bars today, while Karla Homolka walks free and has a family of her own. Number 3. Ian Brady and Mira Hindley, two of the most infamous serial killers in British history. This killing couple was responsible for the terrible Moors murders in the mid-1960s, with 5 confirmed victims between 1963 and 1965. Glasgow-born Brady was a clever student who regularly acted out, appeared in court on charges of assault before his 18th birthday. Hindley grew up in Manchester, living between her parents' home and that of her grandmother in an environment of violence created by and encouraged by her father. Mira and Ian met in 1961 when they were both working for a factory in Manchester. Mira's diary's entries at the time indicate she became infatuated with Ian and they began to date in December of the same year. Brady reportedly brought Hindley out of her hitherto modest and even prim shell, and she began to dress daringly and take explicit photos. By 1963, the couple, who had once fantasized about committing bank robberies, lived together, and conversations turned to serial killers and how to commit the perfect murder. They began their killing spree with 16-year-old local girl Pauline Reed and went on to murder and sexually assault 4 more children between the ages of 10 and 17. Hindley's role was key to the murders. She enticed the children into a van she drove, bringing the victims to her partner. The pair buried their victims in the moors. They were tracked down, confessed to the murders, and were both sentenced to life in prison. Hindley died in prison in 2002, age 60. Brady remains incarcerated in a high-security hospital, having been declared criminally insane. Number 2. Fred and Rosemary West. Fred and Rosemary West were together responsible for some of the most gruesome and depraved and evil killings committed by a couple. Ostensibly, they seemed like a perfectly normal suburban married couple. Behind closed doors, they were sexually abusing and murdering countless girls, including their own family members. Fred West met his second wife, Rosemary, in 1968 when she was just 15 years old, and he was still married to his first wife. He was 12 years her senior. Both came from incredibly disturbed backgrounds, and both reportedly suffered sexual abuse at the hands of their parents. Whatever their childhood experiences were, of course, it's no excuse for the den of depravity and evil that would become their marital home at 25 Cromwell Street in Gloucester, England. Rosemary worked as a prostitute, operating from the family home despite giving birth to 8 children. Between 1972 and 1978, the couple systematically abused their children, murdered several victims, including West's first wife, and even ended up killing daughter Heather when she spoke out about sexual abuse at the hands of her father. Incredibly, all of this went unchecked despite the couple being tried on allegations of sexual assault. It wasn't until 1992, when one of West's daughters told her school friends that her father sexually assaulted her and filmed it, that police made further investigations into the West household. What they found shocked the nation. Although the rape case against Fred West was dropped after witnesses failed to testify, the police pursued an investigation. After all, the West daughter Heather was missing and the circumstances were beginning to look suspicious. In 1994, police began to search the house and found human bodies in the back garden. The remains of Heather were found along with several other bodies. Fred West and Rosemary West were charged with 11 murders and 10 murders, respectively. Both were sentenced to life in prison. Rosemary West will remain incarcerated until her death, while Fred West took his own life by hanging before he could stand trial in 1995, age 53. Number 1. Charles Cheetah Nee and Leonard Lake. Nee and Lake were the evil forces behind between 11 and 25 gruesome rapes, tortures, and killings in the mid-1980s. Born in Hong Kong and educated briefly at a boarding school in London, Nee moved to America to study at Notre Dame de Namur University in California. After dropping out, he briefly enlisted in the U.S. military with false documents. Within a year, he was discharged for theft. Lake was a native Californian, a survivalist obsessed with the idea of a nuclear holocaust. He planned to live in a remote cabin, but he had other plans for the remote area of Walseyville, California, which involved a dungeon and a willing accomplice. In 1981, Lake placed a magazine advert to find just an accomplice, and Nee quickly responded. Thus was born one of the most heinous killing duos in history. By the time Nee joined Lake at the cabin and custom dungeon, Lake may have already murdered his brother and best friend. The two proceeded to kidnap, sexually assault, and murder up to 25 victims, including 2 young families. They filmed each instance of rape, torture, and murder. It was a fortuitous event in 1985 that brought a halt to the 2 men's homicidal rampage. Nee was shoplifting and was caught on camera. Lake tried to cover their tracks by returning to the hardware store from which Nee had stolen and offering to pay, but the police had already arrived on the scene. The police checked out Lake's plates and found them linked to another vehicle. They suspected Lake had used a fake ID, so they searched the vehicle and found a gun, at which point they arrested Lake. Lake consumed poison while in custody, first disclosing his own and Nee's identity to the police. Law enforcement officials were consequently led to the cabin and torture chamber. Videos showing the tortures and one of Nee telling a victim that her crying would do no good, as he and Lake were pretty cold-hearted, so to speak, clearly demonstrated Nee's involvement in up to 25 murders. Nee fled to Canada, but it was again his shoplifting which led to his being found in Calgary. He was extradited to the U.S. and stood trial. Nee is currently on death row. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing videos.